Hey everybody, Tim Kaine here. You all know that we're celebrating 250 years of American democracy. And the day after the framers gathered in Philadelphia to put forth the Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776, Virginians in Williamsburg passed the state constitution, the state Bill of Rights, elected Patrick Henry, our first governor, but also came up with a state seal that promised we would always stand up against tyranny. Sic semper tyrannis, using the future verb tense because they knew that tyranny was not in the rearview mirror. The nation saw, in a very dramatic way, on January 6, 2021, a tyrannical president trying to steal away the peaceful transfer of power after losing an election. I was in the Capitol that day as Donald Trump inspired people to violently attack the Capitol, including Capitol Police, to try to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power. Thank God we stopped him. Some of those who stopped him were brave Virginia state troopers who arrived the first in to come help the Capitol Police protect the democracy and ensure the peaceful transfer of power. But President Trump is trying it again. He's decided that normal rules about redistricting that generally have redistricting done at the beginning of each decade will get in his way in trying to hold on to power in Congress. And so last year in North Carolina, and then continuing this year in other states like Texas and Missouri, President Trump has, in my view, used a tyrannical effort to try to rig politics so that he can maintain power even when the electorate wants otherwise. Um, Virginia wouldn't be true to ourselves if we allowed tyranny to go unanswered. And so Virginia, having embraced nonpartisan redistricting, put it in the Constitution, still believing that in the long haul, that's the right strategy. Nevertheless, has reached a conclusion that right now we got to stand up to tyranny. And so there is a referendum on on a constitutional temporary change before the voters on April 21st, first day of voting today, to say that the voters will pick the maps for congressional representation from now until the next decennial redistricting is done. And in my view, that is a very, very important thing for Virginia to do to stand up against this tyrannical effort of President Trump. The difference between what Virginia is doing and what these red states are doing is that they're giving this to the voters to decide. President Trump in the red states is using backroom deals to rewrite maps to his favor. What the Virginia General Assembly has done is come up with maps that will be put before the public on April 21, letting voters make the decision rather than politicians make it in a back room somewhere far from public scrutiny. This is a very important effort, and I'm very, very firm in my support of it. It's not just about sort of tyranny or rigging the national election. This is also about Virginia. President Trump has interfered in Virginia higher education, forcing the firing of the president of the University of Virginia and trying to do the same thing at George Mason University. When this or any president tries to impose his will on Virginia universities, we need a congressional delegation that will stand up against it. President Trump has engaged in a firing campaign, firing thousands and thousands of Virginia federal employees, many of them veterans, probably firing more veterans than any president in the history of the United States, directly contrary to Virginia's interests. Virginia needs a congressional delegation that will stand up against that instead of rolling over and letting it happen. President Trump has sacked both of the U.S. attorneys in Virginia, the Eastern District and Western District, the key federal law enforcement agent officials in Virginia, because they would not follow his lead and conduct baseless political prosecutions of President Trump's enemies. His own U.S. attorneys stood up against him, and Donald Trump fired them for standing up for democracy. Virginia needs a congressional delegation that will stand up against that kind of tyranny, not roll over and accept it. And should the president be unhappy with the 2026 elections or the 2028 elections and try to interfere with implementing the people's will, just as he did in 2020, 2021, Virginia will need a congressional delegation who will stand up against that tyranny and not just roll over and accept it. These are tough times, and Virginia, true to being a state that has pledged we will always stand against tyranny, has a chance to do it on April 21. I encourage everyone to turn out and vote, exercise the right that is being provided to the people to make the decision about redistricting. Virginia has rejected the backroom deal, and we want people to make the decision. And I certainly intend to vote for the redistricting referendum. With that, I'm really